This wasn't because those cities didn't exist. It was because acknowledging them threatened the very foundation of colonial ideology. This isn't speculation or a fringe theory. When European powers began carving up Africa in the 19th century, drawing maps became a profoundly political act. To justify colonization, they needed to project a specific image of the continent, a vast, empty wilderness, disorganized, and underdeveloped. It was home to ancient cities, bustling trade hubs, and complex societies. These cities complicated the colonial story. An empty land is easy to claim. So, the maps had to be changed. The reality on the ground didn't fit the imperial ambition, so the ambition redrew reality. The map became a weapon, and its first casualty was the truth about Africa's urban past. Long before European mapmakers claimed to discover Africa's interior, the continent's cities were already well known and meticulously documented. They wrote detailed descriptions of Timbuktu's scholarly communities, Kano's formidable walls, and the wealthy port of Kilwa. Intricate trade maps, used by merchants for generations, showed a continent connected by complex networks crisscrossing the Sahara and the Indian Ocean. These weren't just trails in the sand, they were highways of commerce and ideas, linking vibrant urban centers. And where written records were less common, rich oral traditions preserved the histories of royal capitals and city-states, passing down genealogies and epic histories from one generation to the next. These cities were never hidden or lost. They were centers of learning, commerce, and power, fully integrated into the known world. The idea that Africa was a continent without history or cities was not a discovery, it was an invention. As European empires expanded their reach in the 18th and 19th centuries, the maps of Africa began to change dramatically. The detailed knowledge of previous centuries started to vanish, replaced by a new kind of cartography, one that served empire. The old, indigenous names of cities and kingdoms were often erased. In their place, mapmakers put broad, vague ethnic labels, like Land of the Hottentots, which stripped the regions of their political identity. Vast territories, which were in fact home to millions of people in organized states, were simply marked as unexplored or filled with illustrations of exotic animals. Thriving cities were reduced to insignificant small dots or, in many cases, omitted entirely. This wasn't an accident or a result of poor information. It was a deliberate strategy. A map showing an empty, unexplored land is an invitation to conquest. It creates the illusion of a vacuum that the colonizer is destined to fill. By erasing African cities, colonial cartography created a fictional justification for its own existence, turning a land of people and history into a blank slate for imperial ambition. Perhaps no site reveals this ideological mapping more clearly than Great Zimbabwe. When European explorers encountered the monumental stone ruins in the late 19th century, they were stunned. This discovery posed a direct challenge to the colonial narrative. The prevailing racial theories of the time held that Africans were incapable of such architectural and social complexity. They denied that Great Zimbabwe could have been built by local Africans. Instead, they invented elaborate, baseless theories, attributing the city to ancient Phoenicians, Egyptians, or even the biblical Queen of Sheba. Anyone but Africans. This denial was then reflected in the maps. Some maps completely excluded the site. Great Zimbabwe was a fact that contradicted the colonial fiction, so the fiction had to find a way to erase the fact. The distortion wasn't limited to southern Africa. In West Africa, the ancient city of Kano was a major commercial and political powerhouse for centuries. It had massive, fortified walls encircling a population of tens of thousands, a written history stretching back a millennium, and was the hub of a vast trade network that reached across North Africa to the Mediterranean. Its leather goods were famous even in Europe. Yet, when you look at the colonial maps from the 19th and early 20th centuries, Kano's significance is systematically downplayed. It's often marked simply as a native settlement, a generic dot on the map, visually no more important than a minor village. Meanwhile, the newly established European trading posts or small administrative forts nearby are often exaggerated in size and prominence, with bold lettering and clear symbols. The immense urban complexity and history of a city like Kano were deliberately minimized to reinforce the idea that true administration and civilization arrived with the colonizers. The map didn't reflect reality, it constructed a new one. Along the Swahili coast of East Africa, a string of wealthy, cosmopolitan city-states had thrived for over 1,000 years. Cities like Kilwa, Mombasa, and Sofala were powerful maritime hubs, their merchants trading gold, ivory, and spices with Persia, India, and China. They had their own rulers, minted their own coins, and built beautiful mosques and palaces from coral stone. They were independent, African-led urban centers. Their political autonomy was ignored, and they were absorbed into the territorial claims of the new colonial empires. Once these new colonial maps were drawn, they didn't just sit in government archives. They became the official and questioned truth. They were printed in textbooks and hung on the walls of classrooms across Africa and Europe. They were taught a distorted version of history, that Africa was a continent without cities, that urbanization was a gift brought by Europeans. The map wasn't just a picture, it was the curriculum. And reinforced by the most trusted educational tool of all, the map. The lie became so widespread that it was no longer seen as a lie, but as common knowledge. The legacy of this cartographic erasure continues to shape Africa today. The old colonial mindset, which saw African urbanism as chaotic or non-existent, persists in modern language and policy. Thriving urban neighborhoods are often dismissed with the label informal settlements, a term that denies their history, social organization, and economic vitality. It's a modern echo of the colonial mapmaker reducing Kano to a native settlement. This leads to a chronic underfunding of archaeology and historical preservation for pre-colonial urban sites. Why invest in a history you've been taught doesn't exist? This isn't just an academic debate. It affects how modern African cities are perceived, planned, and governed, often ignoring the deep, historical roots that lie just beneath the surface. So, what is the way forward? Africa's great cities were never truly lost. They were deliberately sidelined, buried under layers of colonial ideology and cartographic distortion. Reclaiming this history is a critical act of correction. It means questioning the colonial definitions of what constitutes a city and recognizing the diverse forms of urbanism that flourished across the continent. Most importantly, it means teaching a new history, one that looks beyond the imperial maps and celebrates the deep, complex, and innovative urban heritage of Africa. It's about restoring the cities to the map, and in doing so, restoring a vital part of human history that was very nearly lost. By understanding how they were used, we can begin to redraw them with the truth. In the comments below, tell us, which African city, ancient or modern, do you think deserves more recognition? Thanks for watching.